O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down in the driver's seat, and when I rise up through the gears. You discern my thoughts from a car.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This should be thoughts from a car, but as my car is in the garage being fixed, it's thoughts from a chair today, but I will be using the thoughts from a car channel for this. Right, again, another thought that has occurred to me because of recent events here in the North of Ireland. One of the big political leaders here, he was the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, was an MP, was an MLA, and or stormed executive, was the first minister, I think, was he? If he wasn't. Anyway, very powerful, very prominent man was convicted in June there of 18 counts of offences against children, one of which was one of the most severe. And in the recent days since, lots of things have been sort of dripping out. Drinking habits, attendance at gay saunas, inappropriate and unwelcome advances to women. All these sorts of things are sort of coming out. And what strikes so hard about the whole Jeffrey Donaldson thing is, in a way, his promotion of Christianity, the ease with which he would talk about his faith, talk about the importance of his faith, talk about his political life not as a job or anything like that, but as a calling. He sometimes referred to it as. And so when you view all the things that he's been convicted of, and the stories that are also circulating about other ones that are not subject to the courts, you sort of think, is this person a Christian? And many people will say, well, actually, he could say he was a Christian, but he wasn't a true Christian. And I hear this a lot, and I hear this a lot about other people who have professed faith in Christianity or in God and Christ, and have gone on to be discovered that they've done these horrific things to other people, mostly children, but also in other ways. So this is a sort of fallacy that is used by Christians in this sort of situation. It's called the no true Scotsman fallacy, where everybody, somebody can say that they're Scotsman until they do something different, then they're not. So the example is, a man says, a Scotsman doesn't wear anything under his kilt. And then somebody says, but there, Hamish MacDonald there is a Scotsman, and he wears underwear under his kilt. And the person goes, but he's not a true Scotsman. He's not a real Scotsman. In other words, being a Scotsman is whatever how this first person defines it. You can say you're a Scotsman, but it's dependent on this first person deciding whether you're a true Scotsman or not. And that's the same a lot with these sort of Jeffrey Donaldson, this Christianity sort of thing. People say, oh, well, he wasn't a true Christian. But here's the thing. When I was younger, growing up in the church, I heard it time and time and time again that you weren't born a Christian. You didn't become a Christian at your baptism or your christening. You didn't become a Christian because you were in a Christian family. You weren't a Christian because you went to church once or twice on a Sunday. You weren't a Christian because you read your Bible. You weren't even a Christian because if you believed in God, because even the devil believes in God. You were a Christian if you declared that you were. In a way, you had to self-identify as a Christian. And that was the way it was. You were only a Christian if you said you were. And so just as you couldn't be a Christian just for attending church or just for this, so other people can't just say, oh no, you're not a Christian. Of course they can't. It's up to the person who is making the statement, who is self-identifying as Christian, to make that claim. As soon as they say, I'm not actually a Christian anymore, or I was never a Christian, that's a different matter. But you can't have somebody from outside imposing a value judgment on somebody's faith. And this is the difficulty about the Jeffrey Donaldson thing. I read somewhere, or I heard on the news or something, that since he'd been put into Maghaberry prison, I think this is the direct quotation, that he was continuing to read his Bible. Now that's the word that's doing a lot of heavy lifting, continuing. He didn't just say, all right, I've been convicted. That's it. Game's up. I might as well, stop pretending. He read his Bible while he was committing these acts. He was convicted and he continued to read his Bible. This was part of his faith expression. It wasn't that he thought for any reason that, he maybe is aware that he has done wrong things, but he hasn't stopped believing that he is a Christian. It's a lot of people would say things like people are only pretending to be Christian so that they can get into churches, so they can get access to vulnerable people. But obviously, once you're caught, once the game is up, and if you're only pretending, you have no need to continue to pretend. What's the point? What do you gain? What would Jeffrey Donaldson gain by continuing the pretense that he has a faith, that he is a Christian? Is it going to affect his sentencing? No, it's not. What's the point of continuing this facade, if it is a facade? So if he is continuing to read the Bible, then in a way he is continuing to self-identify as a person of faith, as a Christian. And that raises a lot of interesting questions. Because somebody would say the crimes that he was committed, found guilty of, that would disqualify you from being a Christian. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's still a Christian. Maybe he's just an imperfect Christian. And many Christians will want to distance themselves from Donaldson and others like him and say, no, they don't represent Christianity. But here's the thing, maybe they do. Maybe they don't represent the majority of Christians by any means, but they are still Christian. They still self-identify as Christian. When I was at school, there was a teacher who was convicted of inappropriate dealings with hundreds of boys. And he maintained his faith witness, his Christian witness, right up until his death a couple of years ago. Now, people would say, well, no, his actions prove he's not a Christian. But he would say he was a Christian. So this is a difficult thing, because it's an awkward question, because it suddenly stops being a simple case of good equals Christian, bad equals non-Christian. Because you can see that, certainly in the Donaldson thing, it's a messy, mixed up way of having faith. So, anyway, I'm just asking those awkward sort of questions because I think they need to be answered. I don't think you can just dismiss somebody like Jeffrey Donaldson and say he's not a Christian, because you can't impose your decision on whether somebody's a Christian. It's a self-identifying thing. And if he continues to self-identify as a Christian, then it's nobody's place to say that he's not. But that raises a lot of questions about faith. And it's not just Christianity, it's Judaism, it's Hinduism, it's Islam, it's any religion in which there are people who are continuing to adhere to that religion or identify with it, but have done these heinous sort of acts and crimes. So it's a difficult question. Well, hopefully my car will be fixed by actually tomorrow, and I might be back on the road again, doing one of my very rambly sort of thoughts from an idiot on a particular topic that nobody will really watch, but it sort of keeps me sane. So anyway, look after yourselves. However you self-identify, it's fine with you. Nobody is saying you shouldn't do that or whatever. And look after yourselves, especially in this warm weather. It's boiling. It's boiling. Ugh, it's awful close. It is awful close. And it's horrible. So drink plenty of water. Get in the shade. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm sure I will see you some other time. Take care.